I'm excited to do this. I know you love knowledge management, so I'm excited to learn more about it because, as you know, I'm not very good at it. Like, we don't currently do it at my company, but we want to. And I know there's so many other people who also want to start doing it, or they don't even know what knowledge management is. So maybe we can start by telling everyone what it is and what you use it for.
Absolutely. So knowledge management is actually a very broad subject, and a lot of people think of it instead of as like just a knowledge base, which is different. So knowledge management is a strategy for capturing, recording, and refining the different pieces of knowledge that your team uses. So that could be memos that you've written internally. That could be form responses if somebody asks a question, kind of like an FAQ. That could be how-to, like step-by-step of different pieces of tech you use, or how you process a subpoena internally, because everybody does that a little different. And just any kind of tribal knowledge, how you capture that. So knowledge management is your strategy and your tools for capturing all of those different pieces and saving them in a way that your team can use effectively. So a knowledge management strategy includes things like your processes. So when you get a new question, you need to make sure you save it, what you answered, and write it down and put it in this place so that the next person doesn't have to duplicate that effort. It includes where you saved that information and how people access it. So knowledge management is a very actually broad subject when you start to really dig into it.
And you mentioned that you made it easier for all your team members to actually contribute to the knowledge management during one of the conversations we had in the past. And I thought it was brilliant because that saved their time and actually made them want to contribute to the knowledge management. Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, so there are a few different mindsets that people use when they're approaching knowledge management. I personally prefer kind of like a wiki style because I don't know everything. And if someone spies something that's wrong and it's easy for them to fix, it's usually faster for them to just hit edit and then go fix it and then save and you're done. And then it's fixed, it's done. You don't have to have any follow-up. But there are some people who have a different paradigm where they worry about kind of like that wiki approach because maybe the intern is going in there and changing stuff and you're like, that's not quite right. So kind of a lot of the time we'll end up with a hybrid where there are trusted people who were like, no, you know enough that you can make these changes. And so that's how we kind of keep everything up to date and fresh with everybody on the team. And it makes it a lot more efficient just because we're not saying, oh, this is wrong, let me tag someone else to go fix it. It's, I know what's wrong already. I can go in and fix it. So that I think is what you're getting at.
Yeah. And also I think you mentioned that you just allow your team members to email you the language in an email. They don't have to actually create an article. They can, I think you mentioned something about that.
So I want my lawyers to spend their time lawyering. And so I would rather if they've like got just kind of a spew moment of here's the answer to this question. It's not formatted pretty. It could probably use a little refinement, but the meat of it is there. I would rather they can tag one of my team members in our knowledge base if that's where they're working, or they can forward it to us and then we will create the KB, the knowledge base article, or save it where it needs to go. Please excuse my dogs. No. Can you hear them or not?
A little bit, but don't worry about it. Yeah, it's fine. It's actually cute.
I have a puppy.
See my cat come here. So.
Yeah, I have a puppy. She's new and she's very
Is she there? You can show us.
Yeah. She's the speckly one behind me.
Do you have two dogs?
I have 3 actually.
Oh, see, they're so cute. Yeah, don't worry about them.
Yeah, I was only going to have 2, but I volunteered a shelter locally.
Oh no, really?
Yeah, that's and cute. So I adopted her because she was amazing.
So you were helping her out, and then you fell in love with her. And
yes.
Okay.
So sorry, unrelated.
Don't worry.
I can close the door if it's loud, and they can fight out there.
Don't worry. Yeah.
Okay.
But you know what? So I'm actually thinking, how did you get started with knowledge management? Who on your team? I guess it was you came up with like, we need to start tracking things, like because other legal ops teams or other legal teams, they may not even realize the need. Like they may not understand why they would need to start tracking things. Like how would that help them? Maybe tell us your story. Like when you probably started, you didn't probably have any knowledge management process, right?
Yeah, that's right. When I was first hired at DigiCert, I was not hired as a legal operations professional. I was hired as a file clerk. And so my entire job, they said, you have 2 years, make all of the files beautiful and make it so that when we get acquired next, it'll be super easy to find everything. That didn't last very long. I ended up being ops about 6 weeks later. So that's fine.
I need to know more now. How did that happen?
Because I was coming from an IT background. I was a manager of a help desk and an operations for technology, so a tech operations for a data center. And so I already had kind of that operational mindset and knowledge. I was a manager. I was looking to not be a manager, is why I changed careers.
That's actually funny. Everyone was looking to be the manager.
Yes, it is. It is quite difficult to be a manager, a good manager. And I knew I wasn't doing it well. At the time, I was supervising about 100 part-time student employees.
Oh my gosh.
And so I was like, I don't love this.
Well, so I'm like, that's not like that's so many people versus one manager. How did that
We had 4
happen?
managers. We joined forces together, but yeah, we were responsible for all of them in various capacities. So I stepped back from that. I was like, you know what I love? I love filing, which is weird for most people to say, but I legit could just be happy doing filing 8 hours a day, 40 hours a week for the rest of my life. It would make me so happy. But because I'm so good at it, I do it quickly, number one. And number two, I'm very sharp. And so the people are like, well, if you have some time, would you mind managing the spreadsheet also? Like, hey, it's our equity sheet. I need you to be making these updates. I'll just forward them to you. I'm like, yeah, that's fine. And so, just bit by bit, people are like, you know what, you're good at this too. Could you do this for me? And so that's how I kind of slid into ops, was like, oh, well, I need someone to manage this project. Oh, we have a technology question and that's my background. And I'm always like, yeah, of course, let me help with that. And here we are, 7 years later.
That's awesome. But now I'm curious about the filing. Like, so do you have a system or something? Do you like it because it's structured and you can make it clean? Like, what do you like it so much?
Yeah, so I actually am diagnosed with OCD.
Okay.
And so it really scratches that itch for me, where it's like, okay, you start with this messy pile, and then at the end, it's like this beautiful.
Okay, I can see.
And so, just turn on some music, start renaming files, moving them where they need to go. And at the end, you can visually see the progress that you've made. So that's why I love filing. But to get back to the knowledge management story, when I worked for the IT service desk that I was helping to manage, we already had a knowledge base, and most support teams. So in the tech industry, it's very, very common for support teams to have a knowledge base because, I have 100 part-time people rotating through it just a couple hours a day. And so I need to be able to ensure there is a consistent experience when you call that you always get the correct answer. And so it's very common. And I would be surprised if any support team in the world does not have a knowledge base. And so I had already had that experience there being like, oh, we had this great resource. All you had to do was type your question and it would be like, here you go.
Wow. Would it be more like ChatGPT, where the question could be like intelligent, or would you have to really ask the specific question for the answer to pop up?
So it's kind of like a Google search, but with a set of articles that have been written by people in the past. And so but this was, 7+ years ago. So AI was not a thing yet.
Oh, okay.
So it was mostly just like you search looking on keywords. They were written in the form of like kind of question answer. And so you'd hope somebody had phrased it the same way. It was a little tricky. You did have to kind of learn how to do the searches to get what you needed. Okay. But nowadays, there's definitely some options for that if you're going to get really into the weeds on knowledge management and knowledge bases.
And that starts making sense to me now, because I never really even thought about like those telephone workers who need that. And that makes more sense to me, because when I started in legal ops and when we started talking about knowledge management, I was like, oh, well, everyone knows what they're doing. Everyone knows where to go for things. I'm like, this just seems like a unnecessary step, kind of more like papering things when there's no need to do it. But I start seeing now why it's important, especially I guess for turnover as well.
Okay, yep. Those were the two things I was going to say. As your team gets bigger, you're hiring new people and they don't know the answers yet. And so it's really nice to have a resource for them that they can go to that's not a human. So you're not taking double the time for the person learning and the person teaching. And if it's, just a simple question, they can just go search for it. Oh, look, here's the answer. Someone's asked this before. And then they can learn and self-service that way. Same thing for people in the company. If they're going to be asking me the same question over and over, it's faster and more efficient for all of us if they can just go ask the computer, hey, what's the registered address in Denmark? And then I don't have to provide that for them constantly. And then, as you mentioned, the other item is just with turnover. We have had some people who've worked here for a decade. And if that person ever leaves, they're going to take so much knowledge with them, and not on purpose. They've just been here that long and they know everything. And so part of a good knowledge management strategy is to capture what that would be called tribal knowledge, where she just knows. And so we don't know what she just knows.
So how do you capture it if she's maybe not very eager to go in and start writing articles, but you know that she has lots of knowledge? Do you have strategy for that? And like maybe you have a meeting with her, sit down, take notes. What do you guys do?
Yeah, so when we first started our knowledge base, so that was one of the tools we had in our knowledge management portfolio, we asked everybody on the team, hey, what are some questions that you seem to answer a lot? And if you have an email, we don't want you to spend a lot of time, but if you have something where you've answered it before, forward that to our team so we can capture it. So that was like our just baseline, hey, we have this new tool coming out. It's really going to help you in the long run to answer this question one more time and then not have to ever answer it again. And so that's kind of the argument you make for people who are like, oh, this is an extra request for me. Like, well, pretend it was the original request. And, oh, look, you were going to answer that anyway. So just now you answer it the last time ever, hopefully. The other thing we have done is we have had like meetings or shadows or people where they'll record something for us and then we'll go watch it. And then we'll write the knowledge article based on what we see in that interaction. So sometimes we'll shadow. Sometimes it'll just be like, hey, let's have a quick, 15, 20-minute call. Let's go over just kind of all of your sent mail from the last couple of days as an example and see kind of if there's any patterns or anything that would be good to capture. So we like to do it in bite-sized pieces because it's much less intimidating. That's the other thing about starting a knowledge management strategy is it sounds big because it is big. There's a lot of different pieces that you could focus on, a lot of information that you probably need to capture, but it just starting is all you need to worry about because it will come over time. The more you put it into your processes, the more people use it. There'll be additional questions you can capture as you go. You do not need to have a fully developed, fully baked knowledge management strategy. And you can change tools partway through. It's easier to migrate information that exists than to not have anything captured and then have a new tool and be loading it from scratch. So it's better to have it somewhere. And so that's an important thing for people to remember.
For sure. But like, if you don't have anything at all, like, where would you suggest that people start? Do they start in like a Word document? Do they start in SharePoint? What would you suggest that they do if they don't have the budget for any special tool? I assume there are specialized tools for it, but I don't even know.
Yes, there are a lot of solutions that you can go for. Our journey started in just a shared drive. So OneDrive is what we use as a shared drive. But you could have a local drive that your IT team has set up, whatever you're using to save documents into a centralized area. Most places are doing that. And so what we did was we had a folder in our legal shared drive that was just called form responses. And so that was, hey, I answer this question a lot. Here's what I send them every time. And so we just captured that. We said, all right, if I get that question, I'm going to look in the form responses and I will be able to copy paste an answer that has been pre-vetted. And that was our beginning of knowledge management.
And would that just be a Word document and you would just Control F and find what you need?
So it was, each answer was its own Word document, but I like where your head's at. That works too, because that's kind of like a playbook or an FAQ.
Okay.
Whatever works for your processes and your employees. And that's an important part of knowledge management, is you need to think about the users and how they're going to access the information. So if that's the way your team works, is like, hey, it'd be great if this was in a giant 100-page document and all I have to do is hit Control F for a keyword, great. Then that's how you should capture it. The way we did it was, I'm going to put a subject as the title of the document, and then I'm going to click into there, and there'll only be a couple answers in there.
Okay. I think that's cleaner. Your way is cleaner because like you don't want to like browse through a 100-page document.
But if you've tagged it correctly, like it's a structure question. And at that point, that's just whatever works for your team and your process.
But then as you had more and more things to add to your knowledge management, would you just add additional folders that would be the answers folders, and then you would have something about, I don't know, a process or something like that? We just keep adding to that?
So that's definitely a solution that you could go for. What we ended up doing in our journey is we started in that folder, and then we're like, you know what? We have more than form responses that we want to save. So we ended up with like a trainings folder separately from the form responses. And then as that also started to get pretty big, as we started writing down like, oh, we're onboarding a new person. You know what? As I train them, I'm going to write down what I'm training them on and what their questions are, so that the next person who comes through, I can be like, here is some self-service, or I record the training. I say, all right, this is a new employee. We're going to record this one-on-one session so that the next person can watch that instead of having to engage that full-time resource to do the training one-on-one again. And so we ended up getting a lot of documents and a lot of files, and it was a little bit burdensome to try and find things, because a shared folder is good. It's better than nothing, but it's difficult to use as it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. So we ended up switching over to a SharePoint site, again, because that's included in most modern subscriptions as people are set up. So SharePoint was where we're like, you know what, we need to be able to get some of this knowledge outside of legal. We need to be able to share some of these answers, like form response answers. I don't need to have a legal resource copy pasting the same answer over and over again. We want to do something like an FAQ for the company. And so we moved it to SharePoint so that we could share links with people and be like, hey, here's a link to a document that's got the answer you need in it. Let me know if you have any more questions. So that was our second tier, our second iteration of knowledge management.
Okay, I like that. But did you find any resistance from other team members? Because in my own experience, when we have an answer somewhere, they know where to go to, but they're used to coming to a specific person, and those other stakeholders within the company, they still go to you, even though they know they can find the answer there. So how did you deal with that?
Yes. So, I did a training for our legal team specifically about how to promote the knowledge resources. So I agree. I get a lot of traffic because people are just like, I don't know, Kelsey knows.
Yeah.
And so I will get a lot of questions, and a lot of questions over and over again. And so I was training them on how to encourage the use of the knowledge base without sounding rude, without like brushing people off. And so the way I recommend it is, if you get asked a question and you know it's in the knowledge base, I will still answer the question, at least briefly. Say like, hey, that's such a great question. This is what the definition of an ultimate beneficial owner is. I get that question a lot because I do KYC for our company. If you want more information, here's a link to an article that you can read that gives more color. So I'll give a partial answer, a little snippet of an answer. So I'm still being helpful, but then I'll say, and redirect you to this resource, so that over time, especially if I take a minute and if I get someone who's coming back to me over and over again, maybe with similar questions, probably not the same question that frequently, I'll be like, if you ever, if I'm ever not here, or if I'm on vacation, it really is in your best interest to just do a quick search. And if you can't find it, then let me know, and I'm happy to either point you to it or give you the answer, and then I'll record it if it doesn't exist, because that happens too, where someone will be like, have a really interesting question, and they'll tell me, I looked and it wasn't there. And I'm like, yeah, because it's not there. I'm so sorry. Here's the answer. I'll write it down for next time. Because if you have those interactions constantly where someone says, I looked and I couldn't find it, they're going to stop looking. And so you really need to record as you go and get that to be encouraged in your process of, well, did you check? Is it in the knowledge base? Or, hey, look, I don't know if you've ever heard of the website, Let Me Google That For You.
No.
You basically go in and you type a search term, and then it gives you a link that you can send to the person. And it's like a recording of, here, let me Google that for you. And it's like someone typing in the answer. And it gives you it's a little passive aggressive, but very similarly, I will do something a little less like obviously insulting and be like, oh yeah, I did a quick search of the knowledge base and I found this. Maybe this can help you.
If you have somebody who's very stubborn and keeps coming to you no matter what, like how do you deal with them at the, in the very, very end? Do you just stop responding to the question and you just send them the link?
I would never send a link cold. Just like link, like that gets a little, that's passive aggressive. Like the let me Google that for you. I believe that legal is a customer service based department. And so I never want to have that negative experience stuck in their minds. But I might reiterate and say like, oh yeah, remember we talked about the knowledge base. Here it is again for your reference, and just continue to point them at the knowledge base over and over and over, because eventually they'll get the message that I'm not going to type them a special email answer. Nope, here's the link. Good luck.
I see that this can work for sure. And now in terms of updating it, you said that you give your people the right to update, those who can be trusted, obviously. But how do you make sure that, because you have so many articles, so many information there, do you periodically do some audits on it, or do you check it quarterly or something? I'm not sure, just to make sure that the information that's there is still fresh.
Yeah, that's a great question. So that is part of a knowledge management strategy. So we're going back to, we have that knowledge base, which has a lot of our information in it, but the strategy of keeping it fresh, part of that is our wiki updates. Just if you see something wrong, you should correct it now before it continues to be wrong.
And should they let you know that they corrected something? Let's say they correct something. Should they let the team know I fixed this, or they can just correct it? And
they can just correct it. If they're a trusted role, they can just correct it. I do get, you can subscribe in our current knowledge base. We use Confluence. And so it does send me emails of the updates that are made.
Oh, okay.
So like if I get someone who I'm like, you're kind of trusted, but I'm going to monitor you for a minute, I can kind of see what updates they're making. And, but that's a lot of work, especially again, as your team scales. That's an important part of knowledge management, is paying attention to, well, as our team gets bigger, that's why you have knowledge management, is to help with that growth. So keeping things fresh just as you look at it is, I think, one of the best ways to do it, because if it's a piece of knowledge that doesn't get used very often, it's not that bad if it's not that up to date. But additional things we can do to make sure things are staying fresh is if you include in your processes. So like every time I onboard, I open the KB and just give it a scan to make sure that it's still accurate and that it's not missing anything. Or every time I hire someone, I go into this particular knowledge base. Like we have a knowledge base that just lists every legal team member and what they're responsible for, and then an email for them, so that if you're like, I don't know where this goes, you can go look and see like Control F for vendor. Oh, it's this guy. And so every time we hire someone, that's part of our hiring checklist, is add them to the knowledge base article that is about the team members. So if you put it into your processes, as you know, information will change. But we don't necessarily do like an audit. We don't have like a structured, I'm going to review 10% of the KBs or 10% of these documents I've saved. We don't have a plan for that. It gets really unwieldy over time. And so the wiki approach is generally held, at least in IT circles, to be the most effective for the amount of effort and the payoff.
Yeah, makes sense. And when you have new people, do you, as part of your onboarding, do you introduce them to this knowledge management Confluence software?
Yes. So we are very careful with our onboarding, because it's like drinking out of a fire hose anytime you start somewhere new. So we usually like start them with, here's your manager. Here's like a couple of resources. Like you need to know our terms of service pretty well if you're going to be on the legal team. And so then about a week or two into their job, we'll say like, oh, also, here are some other resources that might be helpful that are in the knowledge base. So like, here's just a page for you to look at. Like one of them is acronyms that we commonly use.
Yeah, that's just a good one, actually.
Yeah, right. And so that one, I have got it referenced for people outside of the legal team, because we have a couple areas where some of it's legal team only knowledge and some of it's internal, but not like only for internal employees. So not public facing. And so that one is a very popular knowledge base article for us. Is here's all of these random, especially specific to our industry. Because there's some things in there that are like EOM means end of month. And if you're new to the business world, you might be like, what does EOM mean? And so it's in there. But it also has a lot of other things in there like SSL and PKI and those things that we use a lot. So we will send them a link to those pages and not expect them to know or do anything besides just access them as a reference. And then we have a third follow-up a little bit later in their time to be like, here's where you can search for some answers if you haven't already been trained on your manager. Because at some point, the manager's likely tired of answering those questions and is like, you should search the knowledge base.
Makes sense. And that makes sense why the knowledge bank exists in the first place, to relieve some of the people, actually.
Yeah, definitely. It helps a lot. And that's, again, I think it's your argument for when people are a little resistant to updating, adding, working in the knowledge bases. It really will save you time and it will save you effort. If you're doing even a bare bones job, a knowledge base or a knowledge management strategy really does end up helping.
Yeah, I can see that. So if you were to start from scratch right now, like brand new company, you're moving companies and they don't have the knowledge bank, what do you start with? Like the essentials, like maybe the answers or to emails, or what would be the first thing that you would tackle and then build from there? Maybe give us like 3 things. So if somebody is out there and they don't have anything, because even for myself right now, if I just finish this call and I want to go over and start building something, I'll be like, well, where do I start?
Sure. Yeah, I definitely, the lowest hanging fruit to me are those form responses, because it's likely someone has typed it up somewhere and you just go to your team and say, all right, what questions do you answer regularly? What do you get a lot? And, me as the KYC person, I get a lot of questions about UBOs and AML kind of disclosures. And so it's like, I answer this question all the time. And a lot of the times you'll find if someone is answering a question a lot, they might actually have a copy paste answer they're using. And it's just saved on their, it's just saved on their local machine. And so the knowledge management strategy is to capture that somewhere that other people will be able to access it, especially if they leave. So that's where I start, is just let me go to my team members. What questions are you answering a lot? And do you have that kind of just like copy paste, or if you don't, give me a previous example of when you answered those questions.
And would it be more for the questions that they get from internal stakeholders, or if they work with like clients, also like questions that they have?
That's another great point that we haven't covered yet. Because your knowledge management strategy, so again, we're backing up from the knowledge base and kind of getting to that broader knowledge management, needs to include your different audiences. So we have actually 4 knowledge bases because we've got different audiences for each one. So there's the legal only knowledge base. So only legal team members can see it. And so that'll be things that are too legally technical for people to understand easily, that are maybe privileged and confidential information, but that your legal team needs to know, especially on like your positions and your fallbacks and that kind of stuff. We have one for the internal employees specifically. And so that one is, information about the UBO is my go-to. It's like, nobody externally really needs to know that, but internally I get that question a lot. And so it's fine. I will give you some answers there. Often I will link from one to the other for the knowledge of like the legal team. It'll be like, hey, the legal team is really like got this definition here that's like the memo of how we use the UBO information, and it will link to the public internal is what I call it, so that they can see what everyone else can see at the same time, so that they've got both. So you can cross link, but remember, if you go from more open to a less open, you'll probably lose some users. And so it's much more common practice. It's better practice for you to go from a restricted group to an open group when you're doing those links. I love links, cross links. Cross links are like chef's kiss of a knowledge base.
Explain to that me once again, because I hear you, but I may not retain this.
You're fine. So if I have
your information is more comprehensive in the smaller group than it is in the broader group.
Correct. So in the smaller group of legal, there's a lot more in-depth, there's a lot more color, but I will often link to the public internal, which is the everyone at the company knowledge base, to be like, okay, here's what you need to know legal. Here's what we tell people. Like, if you're not sure what in this you can disclose, here's the same version of this article, but written for a different audience.
Okay.
Yes.
So I see, because then when they're answering, they wouldn't necessarily take it from there. They would take it from the public.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes. So there's some cross-linking there. You may have to write multiple versions of the same document for your different audiences. And so that's why part of why we have multiple. I have an equity admins KB that's like 5 people.
Wow. But I was about to ask how many of you is maintaining this.
Yeah. So in the legal one, there's about 30 team members. Public internal is still maintained by legal, but it's accessed by our 1,400 global employees.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
Equity admin is 5 people. And I think I'm the only one who's ever contributed to that KB because I was the only one doing it. And so at some point, people are like, if you ever leave, what will we do? And so I started writing everything down. And then
so
our
you
last
have your own personal stream
for that subject matter, yes, but that one's even more locked down than the legal team because it is such a small group of us who have that. And then the last one is our public-facing knowledge base, where it's like, okay, I have a privacy question. Well, here, come look at our beautiful privacy page that explains all of our privacy practices, and like, here's a link to the policy, and here's a link to this. And so we have those 4 different audiences. That's just the legal knowledge bases. That's not all the knowledge bases DigiCert has. That's just the ones that legal maintains. So those different audiences, we've gotten on a sidetrack here from your original question, but it's a very important concept because as you're architecting your knowledge management, there will come a point where you go, this is important to write down, but not everybody should see it. And so that's where you start to get into, again, that design of how your system is going to work.
Yeah. I was thinking if there may be any other questions that somebody is starting with.
We were talking about the low-hanging fruit, and I never got to 2 and 3.
Oh, that's 2, yeah.
Yes. So first, I would start off with just general answers, record them into the correct knowledge area, however you're going to define that access. Next, I think the next most low-hanging fruit, because that gives you just kind of a base to start from, is to just record whatever you're working on right now. Whatever someone is working on in this moment, because, for me, the equity knowledge base is a good example. I work on equity maybe 4 times a year. And so it doesn't occur to me to start writing that down until I'm in the middle of it going, I wish someone else could help me with this, but I'd have to train them. And it's like, well, what if I just quickly write something and then say, follow this knowledge base article?
Do you have a structure by now for the articles to clearly explain the steps? Do you have some kind of outline that you follow every time?
So my undergrad is actually in editing.
Okay, look at you. You're perfect for this.
So that is something called a style guide. So in the editorial world, most places have a style guide, and you can look at the Associated Press, and they have this is how you reference people, and this is how you do titles and headings. So I do have a very abbreviated, it's maybe a page long set of directions for authors if they're interested, because I agree, making things consistent helps with the cognitive load of reviewing different articles, especially if you're looking for an answer and you're going to a few of them. However, and this is my big however, I'd rather the knowledge be captured, however it's going to look, than worry about trying to make people make the style guide look nice. I think that's the 301, 401 level of knowledge management is having that style guide adhered to. So a lot of the times I will just have my girls go in. We're a team of 3 ladies, and we'll go in after it's been captured and kind of harmonize it a little bit. But I do have a list of guidelines, like what should the title of a knowledge base article look like? Because if it's just, the name of a piece of software, and that's all the title of the knowledge base article is, I don't know what I'm getting into. And so I need it to be a very descriptive title. A lot of the times it'll be a question, or it'll be a how to do this. So there's some examples of types of titles. Then I also have, like, when you're using headings, this is what style it should be. This is when you should use a heading. This is when you should use a numbered list versus a bulleted list. So we do have a style guide for that. But that is really next level when you're getting there. So I wouldn't have anyone worry about that if they are just getting started.
Yeah, I didn't even think of a style guide that is like super like next level. I was thinking more of like, how do you structure your knowledge when you're writing down what you know? Because people can start writing very long paragraphs that when you read it, you're like, well, you're not sure what they're getting at. So how do you do yours? Like, let's say you have a article and there's a question, how to do X.
So at the very top of most knowledge base articles, we start with context. So we just have a section that says, here's some important background you may need. And if you don't need that, you can just skip over that section. But like, let's say I just had an ESG piece of software. Someone wrote a KB for me. And so the first paragraph is just, here's what this ESG software does. Here's why we have it. And then the real question of the KB, so this is the next section, is when someone asks me to disclose our ESG score, what do I do? And so
I love that.
So it's like, you've got the background. This is helping you understand. But if you've already read this, if you already know the tool, but, I can't remember, do we disclose it under this situation or not? Then we'll go into, usually it's a step-by-step. So it'll be like step 1, make sure they're under an NDA.
Okay.
And then if there'll be a separate article that it's like, if you don't know how to do that, click this link. It'll take you to another article that's like how to determine if an NDA is active. If you don't need that, you just keep going. Okay, yes, I know they're under NDA. Step 2, give this information or talk to Charla and say, Charla, we need to disclose this. What's our current score? And then to say, okay, yep, Charla gives you the score. You need to give it to the sales contact. Here's how you look up a sales contact. So there's a lot of cross-referencing to keep KBs as short as possible for people, especially who are more advanced users of the system. If they're like, yeah, I know how to do all this, I just couldn't remember who the person was I talked to. And so it's like, that's all I came here for.
People? You tag actual people, because if they leave, you have to go back and like replace them?
Yes. So luckily we don't have a ton of turnover, but I do have a strategy for when people leave, and all you have to really do is search the knowledge base with their name as the keyword, and then it'll pull up every article that references them, and then you can hot swap them for their replacement. Sometimes, if it's possible, like we only have one person who works on ESG, so we don't have an alias, but a lot of our teams over time get aliases. And so if I can, I'll say like, yeah, talk to privacy@digicert.com. You could also do something like referencing that list of people from earlier that I mentioned, where it's like, here's all the team, but I don't want to make people have to find information. So we do reference people by name. And if someone leaves, that's part of the checklist of them leaving is, okay, we got to remove their name from the knowledge base. So yeah, that's part of keeping it up to date is you got to watch out for those dead names.
Yeah,
I also will include titles, which can help too. So sometimes I'll be like, talk to the chief people officer. I know who that is. It's probably been that person for the last 10 years. But if they leave, I don't have to go in and replace that name over and over. It's just a little bit more nuanced when it's like a legal person and they're doing multiple jobs. And you're like, their title doesn't really apply to what this question is. And so I'm just going to put the name in. But that's a really good point and something you should be thinking about. You've got the knowledge management mindset now that we've been talking for a little bit.
No, it's just because, I've been new to the role. So I have so many questions in general, like, okay, how do people do this? How do people do that? Right? So,
So the template is generally context and then steps. But sometimes, like a knowledge base article is just purely informational. It's not a how-to. How-to is usually steps. So then it is just, here's context about why this information is important. Here's the reference information. So a lot of the times that'll be something like, here's a memo about this particular topic. There's not a set of steps in that case. So the template, the outline of articles really depends on the content. And again, if you get someone who's writing something that's just really rambly and long, we just go in and clean it up later.
Okay.
Yeah.
So in order to submit a brand new article, it has to go through approval, I assume, through you guys, or do they submit their own new? Because I know they can edit, but they cannot.
Yeah, Trusted Roles can publish in our company. I could turn that off if we run into a lot of problems with people publishing weird stuff. But hopefully in your department, I mean, it depends on how big it is and how much you trust them and how long you've worked there. You can turn that on and off in our tool, but it depends on your tool too. We haven't really talked about knowledge tools much.
Yeah, we should get into it now because like you started in S Drive, but you're in Confluence right now, right?
Yeah. So yeah, we started in a shared drive, then we went to SharePoint, which is kind of like just an online version of a shared drive, right? Where I can link people. And now we're in Confluence. And the reason we chose Confluence, because I'm doing knowledge management with $0 as my budget, is because the company already uses it. And that's where our service desk has their knowledge base. So that's why we use that. It's not my favorite knowledge management tool, but it gets the job done.
Would you mind saying what would your favorite be?
Oh, man. I'm just a big fan of some of the homegrown tools that I've used. So nothing that's out on the market, but I don't have a lot of experience with some of the, especially legal specific knowledge management softwares. I've used Jira in the past also. These are both, Confluence and Jira are both designed for IT and service desk kind of support. So they're a little bit weird.
Yeah, I never understood them, to be honest with you. Like I think we have Jira. I went in it twice and I was like, I don't get it. So.
Yes, they're designed for technical users. And so if you are not a technical user, then they don't make sense. So I don't love them for legal team members. Just the simpler you can get, there's just a basic set of functionality. So I don't necessarily have a favorite. My favorite is the one that I can use. So today it's Confluence.
Okay, and I actually seen Confluence. You showed it to me at some point. It looked great, actually.
It's just very busy.
Using it busy, but you could easily search. I like that.
Yeah. So yeah, and that's like I have some things. It's like you need to be able to search in a knowledge base tool that you're using. You need to be able to. It's called a WYSIWYG. So you need to be able to just like when you go in and hit bold, it bolds something. It shouldn't be more difficult than that. So just the simpler, the more streamlined you can get it, the better. I want it to be able to do bullet points, for example. And I don't want to have to code in my HTML to do that. But we use Confluence because it's what the company already had, and it was where knowledge was already being stored. Because we did have a couple other options internally for tools that we had, but right now, if I go into Confluence and I search for a keyword, I will get access to every article in every knowledge base that I can see. And so if legal hasn't documented something, maybe support has. If support hasn't, maybe the engineering team has. Maybe the product team has.
Yeah, it makes sense. That's all in one place.
So the whole company's knowledge is in Confluence. And so that's why we've put it there. It's really helpful, but it's not designed for a legal knowledge base.
Okay. That's actually so cool. Like, I feel like I learned a lot about this subject today. I don't know if I will just go in and start our own just yet. Like,
start writing it down and just saving it into a folder for later. If you're like, oh, I answered this question, even if it's a question you don't get a lot. It's like, I wrote this whole thing, copy it, save it somewhere. And then in the future, when you're ready to start, you'll have a set of information that you can work with.
Well, we do have our language library for like drafting contracts. So would that be part of the knowledge bank? I
mean, if it's part of your knowledge management strategy, it may or may not go into your knowledge base. Our knowledge base just has a single article for playbooks that says, here are links to all the playbooks. So that if you're looking for a playbook, just go to that article and click it and it'll take you to the playbook itself. We don't put the playbooks in the knowledge base, but they're part of knowledge management because you're capturing knowledge at your company.
Okay, so just to be clear, like with your acronyms, now we're saying knowledge base, knowledge bank, knowledge strategy, and all that. Strategy I can understand, but like knowledge base versus the knowledge bank, what's the difference there?
So the knowledge base, when I refer to that, is specifically one of those 4 areas where I'm saving knowledge into Confluence. So I have a knowledge base for legal internal, public internal, equity admins, and then an external facing customer knowledge base. They are all part of the knowledge bank together. And then the management.
So all of it is a bank. Okay.
Yes. Yeah. So the bank is just kind of referring to everything I have saved somewhere. And then knowledge management includes my processes and strategies.
Yeah. And then those articles are part of knowledge base for a specific subject area. And then your playbooks are separate from that.
Yes. So they're part of our management strategy. I would say they're part of a knowledge bank, but they are not in the knowledge base. We keep them separate in Word documents because, one, they're really long. So, I don't want someone to go into a knowledge base article and have to scroll for 1,000 years or Control F. Like a knowledge base article to me should be maybe a page or less. If it's longer than that, you need to look at what you're doing. And so like we'll reference resources outside of the knowledge base because the knowledge base ourselves can only do like 5 types of formatting. I can't do comments. I can't show a red line unless I do a screenshot. And so if I need to have a set of drop downs, like if I have a template document that's got, you can drop down in this and this and this. It's really, really hard to show that effectively in Confluence. And so a lot of the times we'll link to just a hosted Word document, which is where our playbooks are. They're Word documents saved on SharePoint. And so I'll just link you to the SharePoint document to be like, okay, this was too complex to put into a Confluence page. So you're going to have to look outside to get to it.
Okay. So your strategy is, again, that your knowledge articles are pretty short. And they link you to other short articles. And if you need something that's more comprehensive, you link them to specific playbooks or specific guides. Is there a difference between playbook, guide, and resource? Or is it all the same, just different?
I mean, a playbook to me is a very specific document where it's here are my positions, here are my fallbacks. But other resources, just generically, if it gets really long and complicated, it's easier to show it in a document.
I'm just trying to think for us, like we have specific guides for like offboarding guides. We have a guide how to, let's say, process our offboarding for the like legal team.
Yeah, we have a specific checklist.
Yeah, so something like that with the steps, like check this, check that, make sure you do this, do that. Would that be an article or would that be a playbook? Yeah,
that's definitely an article for us. But again, our steps to offboard someone, it's like maybe 15 steps. So it's not super long. If it gets really long and complicated and it's the information you need to capture is difficult to convey in your chosen knowledge base tool, that's where we'll link outside. I don't actually mind a knowledge base article that gets long as the information in it is conveyed in an efficient and effective manner.
Makes sense. And when you guys do those videos, because you mentioned you do little like instructing videos, you would also then link them. Like if you need more information, you link them to a specific video.
Yes. And then we also have like directory KBs where it's like, hey, here is the checklist of training. If you're going to be processing a signature, here are the resources you need to watch 1 through 10 or whatever, so that there's still an article that says, here is the information, here are links to those different KBs. Here are links to the trainings if you want to watch someone do it. So not all KBs have to actually have information in them apart from like, oh, I'm linking you to where it goes. Which brings me to another subject we haven't covered. Sorry, it's a very in-depth subject.
I love it.
An important principle of knowledge management is having a single source of truth. So this comes back to a little bit on how do you keep things fresh? How do you keep things updated? Because I do not want to have to update information in multiple places if it changes.
Okay, makes sense, yes.
And so if I get something, and that's why I link out a lot, is I will get questions where someone's like, what are the sanctioned countries that we can't sell to? I'll get that question pretty regularly. But legal actually isn't in charge of that knowledge base article. Support is. And so it's in the support knowledge base. But if someone comes into my knowledge base and they're not searching the company wide, because you can search just that specific knowledge base, and they look for it, you'd think it should be there because we have the trade compliance analysts in legal. But the answer is not in our knowledge base, and I don't maintain that list. So instead, I do have an article that says the list of sanctioned countries is held here. And it's a link to the single source of truth. Because theoretically, I could have just copy pasted that answer over and had it live in my knowledge base, but chances are it'll get out of date pretty quick. I don't have a process to update it. It's really hard for someone to see if it's inaccurate. So instead of having that need to be updated every time something changes, you only link to the one place where it's listed and where someone is updating it. Same thing for our office address list. We have an internal intranet that lists all of our office addresses, and it might be easier for me to copy paste and say like, yes, here they are. But we move offices from time to time, and I don't ever think about updating my KB when an office address changes. And so I will just say, you know what, if you need an office address, here's a link to where they live.
So out of curiosity, how many articles do you think you have, like ballpark, by now?
Across all of the different knowledge bases?
Only yours, the ones that
well, I mean, there's 4 of the legal ones.
Yeah, the 4,
Oh, hundreds.
Oh my
goodness. And I probably write a new one every couple weeks at this point. When I first started, it was like multiple times a day because I'd be like, oh, shoot, I should write this down. Oh, shoot, I should write this down. So over time, I do that a lot less because I've slowly recorded everything. But I'll still run into stuff where I'm like, oh, this hasn't been written down yet. And sometimes if I don't have time in the moment, because, you're working, you're doing stuff, you're just like, let me fix this right now for you. Peace out. Trying to move business along. Sometimes I will keep a running list of articles I need to write. And then when I have a little bit more downtime in the future, I'll take a break and I'll write a quick article. So that's another good strategy too, is if you're like, I don't have time in my schedule right now to write down, because it does take me, even as short as 10 minutes is like an interruption in my day. So sometimes I'll just say, okay, remember to write a how-to article on when you're adding someone into this specific legal tool.
Wait, I had another question on statistics. I assume Confluence cannot do that, I guess. But can you see how many people visit your articles on like monthly basis or anything like that? Or you guys cannot have stats on that? I'm just out of curiosity because that will make you feel good. Like, oh, this is a new article and already 50 people used it or something like that.
I haven't talked about statistics yet either. Yeah. There's so much depth to this. Confluence does have a statistics package, but you have to pay for it.
Okay.
So I'm working on a $0 budget, so I do not get those statistics. All I can see is the number of unique visitors.
Oh, that's great. That's what I mean. Like just.
But
just
I mean, like if I use the page 4 times, I only get counted as one use. And so
okay.
So it's.
But is it per like day or is it like you used it one time?
It's all time.
7 years ago.
Yes.
Oh, then that's not
so
good.
it's not very helpful.
Yeah. Okay. I thought at least if it counted once a day, like this user logged in today and then tomorrow, right?
No, it doesn't work like that, which is too bad because I would love more data because if you can get that data, it really helps you show that the process and the tools are working. It supports that, hey, look, 30 people referenced this page and we got 0 emails about it.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was getting at. Yeah, that would be fantastic.
We've had a lot of people reference information about this tool that we've saved in here. We should record more knowledge about that because clearly people want that information. So statistics would be great. I do send out like surveys to people and say like, hey, anecdotally, is it helpful? How often do you feel like you use it? So I get a little bit of data that way. Data is my favorite, and it depends on your tools whether or not you can collect it. But yeah, I would love to get more in-depth data. Just someday when I have budget, right?
Yeah, for sure. Too bad you couldn't go retroactively to all of those, years that you've been using it, because that would be such a good data. But do you guys feel the difference? Let's say you never had an article on something, and then you write one, and you see in the next 2 months, like your request.
Yes, anecdotally, and just kind of generally, we'll get people who later will be like, yeah, I reference that KB every day.
Oh, yeah, that makes you feel so good, I'm sure.
Yeah, I'll send a link to someone who's never used the KB before, like they're new or they just didn't know it existed. I'll be like, hey, here's a link that has all that information. Use it anytime you need. And I'll get emails back that are like, this is amazing. I'm so happy to have this. This is going to change how I do my work. And so I've got those stories too, where someone's like, I didn't even know this was here. And now I can do my own self-service and answer my own questions. And a lot of people really prefer that. There are those people who prefer a human touch and will try and ask you a question over and over. But most people would rather just go to a page and not have to interact with a human to get the answer that they need.
Yeah. And well, lastly, future state, if you had the money, the budget, would you ever consider having a chatbot?
Oh, yes, that's another good one. That's been on my list since I started knowledge management. It was a very hot topic, 5+ years ago, before AI even came into the scene. I've always wanted to do it because it seems like it would be a really nice tool for people. It gives them a little bit more of that human touch, a little bit less of I feel like I need to know all the keywords to find what I'm looking for. I would love to do a chatbot, but it's cost prohibitive for me at this point. So yes, chatbot would be great. And especially an AI powered chatbot who could sit on top of those knowledge bases and then synthesize information. Absolutely, that would be great.
Well, do you think that you would be well set up the way you have them structured to easily move this knowledge base to some sort of AI tool in the future if you ever had the budget? Because I'm just wondering if whenever you implement a new tool, there is this whatever we have going on is not good enough to be transferred. We have to do lots of clean up, put it in different format. Do you think the format you have it in now would be just easy to transfer to a tool?
I think it would be easy to transfer to another knowledge tool. The question about whether or not an AI chatbot could parse it, I'm less sure of, just because it depends on the underlying technology that is scraping the data for that chatbot.
But you have IT background. Basically, all your words now, I'm like, she's IT.
Yeah. So, it would depend on the vendor, but I think if the information is there and if it's already human readable, it should absolutely be AI readable. So I think it just would depend on how their AI is set up to collect that data. Do I need to just get it a login and it can crawl through my answers already? Do I need to export? Don't love that as an option, because then I'd have to update it constantly for what the AI is reading off of. I want it to read off my live database. So it would depend on if it's got a connection that it could live read my Confluence pages. If it can't, I might consider moving it out of Confluence, but then I lose all of my other knowledge bases that are at the company. So I'm in an interesting spot where it's like, I don't need a chatbot. It would be so cool. It would be nice to have, but that's next level legal ops that I don't have the resources or the time.
Yeah, for sure. I just know that there are people out there who have the resources, but they don't have the knowledge base. So they have different problem, because they can spend the money, but they don't have any knowledge.
And that's where we go back to just start capturing it now, and having it somewhere is better than not having it written somewhere, anywhere.
Yeah, because exactly when the time comes, they can just transfer it.
Yeah, so transferring is easier than starting and synthesizing it from scratch.
Yeah, 100%.
It gives you options.
Kelsey, you're always such a pleasure to speak with, and you always know so much about everything. Knowledge management is just one of the things that I think you're great at. We had great conversations about external counsel. You're saying you're not an expert, but to me you are. You have so much knowledge about it. So it's really always a pleasure.
Absolutely, Annette. I appreciate you having me on, and This has been a great conversation. And if you hear this before May of 2025, I will be presenting at Clock in Las Vegas on how to DIY your knowledge management. So if you want to come join me in the Clock session, I'd love to see you guys there.
That's amazing. Yeah, I would love to be there to see you present, maybe one day. Thanks, Kelsey, for today.
Yep. Have a good one, Annetta.